I came home early that night. It was raining hard, the kind of rain that makes the whole world feel quieter, except for the sound of your own thoughts. I opened the door, expecting to see my wife on the couch, maybe watching her shows with a blanket and tea. Instead, she was sitting at the kitchen table, her phone face down, both hands wrapped around a glass of water like she was trying to keep it from shaking. She looked up as I hung my coat. Her eyes were swollen, red, like she'd been crying for hours. I thought someone had died. "Can we talk?" she said, her voice breaking. "That's never a good start." I sat down. She wouldn't look at me, just stared at the condensation on the glass. Then she said it, the kind of sentence that rips the ground out from under you. "I'm pregnant, but I don't know if it's yours or my ex's." For a few seconds, I didn't breathe. My ears rang. My brain refused to process it. She kept talking, something about how it just happened, that we'd been fighting a lot, that she made a mistake. The words blurred together like radio static. I wasn't even angry. Not yet. I just stared at her and realized I didn't recognize the woman sitting across from me anymore. When she finally went silent, waiting for me to explode, I just said one word. "Congrats." Her eyebrows shot up. "What?" I stood up, calm as ever, grabbed my car keys, and said, "You should celebrate. It's not every day you get to destroy a marriage and call it a blessing." Then I walked out. No yelling. No slamming doors. No drama. Because she wasn't worth that energy anymore. That night, I drove aimlessly through the city. The rain blurred the traffic lights, turning red and green into streaks of color on my windshield. I kept hearing her voice in my head, "It might not be yours." We'd been together for 7 years. I thought we were solid. I'd worked overtime, built us a home, planned for kids. And she? She was keeping old memories alive, apparently, old lovers too. I parked near a bridge and sat there for hours. I didn't cry. I just felt done. Something in me shut off permanently that night. When I finally went home, she was still awake. She'd clearly been waiting, probably hoping for a fight, some emotional explosion she could twist into guilt or forgiveness later. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I walked in, grabbed my pillow and a blanket, and said, "Don't worry, I'll sleep on the couch. You'll need your rest. It's tough growing someone's baby." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. The silence between us was louder than any shouting could have been. The next morning, I called my lawyer. His name was Alan, a guy who'd helped my friend through a nasty divorce last year. I told him everything, straight to the point, no sugarcoating. He didn't even sound surprised. He'd seen it all before. "Do you want to wait until the baby's born for a paternity test?" he asked. "No," I said. "I want out now." He told me he'd prepare the papers immediately. And then, while I waited for my freedom to be printed on legal letterhead, I started to notice the small details that made her betrayal obvious. The late nights at the gym. The new phone she didn't want me to check because it was for work. The perfume that wasn't hers. The sudden urge to delete social media. The clues had been there, flashing neon red, and I'd ignored every one of them because I trusted her. That's the thing about love, it blinds you just enough to miss the obvious. 2 weeks later, she was busy planning her baby shower with her friends. She hadn't even told them the truth. Everyone thought I was the excited dad. I didn't correct them, not yet. I let her enjoy the illusion for a while. Then, on the morning of her baby shower, I called Alan. "Send the papers today," I said. He hesitated. "You're sure?" "Absolutely." By noon, a courier arrived at her house with a delivery envelope. I wasn't there to see it, but her best friend sent me a message later that night. Apparently, my soon-to-be ex broke down in front of everyone, mascara running, crying that I had humiliated her. No. I hadn't humiliated her. She'd done that to herself. I'd just chosen the timing. That evening, she called me. The sound of her voice was somewhere between rage and desperation. "How could you do this to me today of all days?" she screamed. I waited until she stopped yelling and said quietly, "You made your choice. I'm just making mine." Then I hung up. I slept like a baby that night, for the first time in months. Because once you stop begging people to value your loyalty, peace finally shows up. After the papers were sent, the house felt different, lighter somehow. Her things were still there, her perfume still lingered on the sheets, but the emotional weight she carried with her guilt and lies was gone. I started sleeping better, eating again, even laughing a little. For weeks, I didn't answer her calls. She sent long texts full of blame and self-pity. "You blindsided me. You ruined everything. You could have at least waited until after the baby shower." She didn't once say, "I'm sorry." Not once. That told me everything I needed to know. She tried to turn people against me. Mutual friends messaged to ask if I'd really walked out on a pregnant woman. I sent them a single screenshot of her text where she admitted she didn't know whose baby it was. Silence. Then one by one, they stopped defending her. She wanted sympathy, what she got was reality. I never raised my voice, never slandered her online, never even told her family the details. My revenge wasn't loud. It was quiet, precise, the kind that hits harder because it's wrapped in composure. A month later, her best friend, the same one who'd hosted that baby shower, reached out. She said my ex had moved in with the supposed father. But she doesn't look happy, the friend whispered. He's broke, doesn't help, always out drinking. I didn't react. Karma had clocked in for work, and I wasn't about to interrupt. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding. I took on extra shifts, redecorated the apartment, started going to the gym again. The version of me she betrayed was gone. This new one didn't need closure, he was writing his own. Still, the universe wasn't done with me. 6 months after the divorce filing, I got a letter from her lawyer. She wanted child support. According to her, the baby looked just like me. I laughed out loud when I read that. The audacity. Alan, my lawyer, sighed when I called him. Classic, he said. They all try this move. Don't worry, we'll handle it. He arranged a paternity test. She didn't like that one bit. She tried calling, texting, even showing up at my workplace. I never answered. She could scream into the void all she wanted, I wasn't stepping back into it. The day of the DNA test, she showed up at the clinic looking nothing like the woman I used to know. Dark circles under her eyes, hair unkempt, makeup smudged, life had stripped away her filters. She tried to talk to me in the waiting area. Can we just fix this? She asked, voice trembling. I looked at her calmly. You can't fix a mirror after you've smashed it. You can glue the pieces back together, sure. But it'll never reflect the same. She cried silently as the nurse called our names. We did the test. It took less than 5 minutes. Just a cotton swab and a signature. Years of love, trust, and history, reduced to a few cells inside a tube. When I walked out, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The results came a week later. 0% probability. The baby wasn't mine. Alan forwarded me the document with a small note, told you so. That night, I opened a bottle of whiskey I'd been saving for a special occasion. I poured one glass and sat on the balcony, watching the city lights. For the first time, that apartment didn't feel like a place I'd been abandoned in. It felt like freedom. She called again. I let it ring out. The voicemail that followed was chaos, tears, shouting, threats, begging. You're heartless. You ruined my life. How can you just move on like that? The truth is, I hadn't moved on overnight. I'd bled quietly for months while she played the victim. The difference was, I'd learned to heal without making noise about it. 2 days later, her lawyer dropped the child support claim. It was over, officially. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post online. I just went to work the next morning, nodded to Alan's text that said, case closed, and carried on with my day. Revenge, I realized, isn't about making them hurt. It's about reaching a point where their chaos no longer touches you. But deep down, I knew she wasn't finished. People like her never are. And I was right, she came back one last time. That's when things got personal. It was a cold morning when she showed up again, about 2 months after the DNA results. I was at my office, mid-meeting, when the receptionist buzzed in. There's a woman here asking for you. Says it's urgent. I didn't even have to ask who. She stood in the lobby with a baby stroller, eyes wild, hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing a coat that looked like it had been slept in. The sight of her almost made me pity her, almost. The baby was asleep, tiny hands curled under a pink blanket. She looked peaceful. Innocent. The complete opposite of the chaos surrounding her. Can we talk? She asked. I nodded toward the coffee shop across the street. 10 minutes. Then I'm leaving. We sat by the window. She didn't waste time. I know what the papers said, she started, but I swear, she looks just like you. I stared at her, trying not to laugh. DNA doesn't lie. People do. Tears filled her eyes. I don't know how this happened. You don't? I leaned back. Maybe because you slept with your ex while you were married. That's usually how this sort of thing happens. She covered her face, sobbing quietly. For a brief second, I saw the girl I'd fallen in love with years ago, but that version of her was long gone, buried under deceit and self-pity. Then she said the line that made my blood run cold. He left. The father. He doesn't want her. He said she might not be his either. I blinked. So now you're not sure who the father is, again? She nodded. Her tears weren't for me. They were for herself, for the life she destroyed with her own hands. I could have said something cruel. I could have reminded her of the baby shower, the texts, the way she humiliated me in front of everyone. But looking at her, holding that child who didn't ask for any of this, I just felt tired. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean for things to go this way. I finished my coffee, stood up, and said, "You did. You just thought you'd never pay the price." As I walked away, she called after me, voice trembling, "You're still the best man I ever had." I didn't turn around. Some compliments come too late to matter. Over the next few weeks, I heard bits and pieces about her from mutual friends. The man she'd cheated with had moved states. She was working 2 jobs, living with her mother, struggling to make ends meet. I could have gloated. Instead, I just focused on rebuilding the life she tried to ruin. Funny thing, peace comes quietly when you stop trying to prove your worth to people who can't see it. I started therapy. Took solo trips on weekends. Learned how to cook something other than takeout. My apartment became my sanctuary, simple, organized, silent. I deleted her number. Blocked her everywhere. Not out of hate, but because sometimes forgiveness means closing every door that leads back to the fire. Then, one evening, I got a letter in the mail. It was from her. No return address, just her handwriting, shaky, rushed. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "I'm sorry. You were right about everything. I wish I could undo what I did to you. But I'm paying for it every day now. Please don't hate me. I just wanted you to know that she's healthy and beautiful." I named her Grace. I sat there reading it over and over again. Grace. The name hit me harder than I expected. Maybe because that's what I'd lost for a long time: grace, peace, self-respect. And somehow, through all the destruction, I'd found it again. I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and locked it away in a drawer. Not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder, not all endings are tragedies. Some are lessons written in tears and legal ink. A few months later, I saw her one last time, by accident. I was walking through a grocery store when I heard a familiar laugh. She was there with Grace, pushing a cart, looking calmer, steadier. She looked up and saw me. For a moment, we just stood there, 2 people bound by what could have been and broken by what was. She smiled faintly. I nodded. That was enough. We didn't need apologies or explanations. The universe had already handled that. That night, I looked at my reflection and realized something simple. You can't stop people from betraying you. But you can decide whether their betrayal breaks you or builds you. I chose the latter. And maybe, just maybe, that was my quiet revenge all along. A year passed. It's strange how time doesn't heal everything, it just teaches you how to live with the scars. The ache dulls, the memories fade, and the parts of you that once broke start to grow stronger in their cracks. I wasn't the same man I was in that kitchen the night she confessed. Back then, I was too trusting. Too eager to believe that love could fix anything. Now, I'd learned something harder: love can't survive where truth has died. I moved to a new apartment across the river. A clean start. No ghosts in the walls. I sold the old car we bought together, gave away the furniture she picked out, and replaced everything with things that were entirely mine. It was more than redecorating, it was reclaiming my life piece by piece. The mornings became my favorite time. I'd wake early, make coffee, watch the city come alive from my balcony. No screaming matches. No lies. Just silence, the kind that felt earned. I started running again. At first just to clear my head, but soon, I noticed my lungs didn't burn anymore. My body was lighter, my steps steadier. Freedom has weight too, but it's the kind you carry with pride. Sometimes, though, I'd catch myself wondering about the child, Grace. I'd think about her growing up without knowing the truth about the man she almost called father. But I'd remind myself that it wasn't my story to live anymore. She was innocent, untouched by the choices her mother made. And maybe one day, she'd learn that her mother once hurt someone deeply, and that person chose peace instead of revenge. That thought brought me more closure than any apology could. One afternoon, I met Alan, my lawyer, for lunch. We hadn't seen each other since the court date. He smiled as he sat down, that same calm, composed look he'd worn through the entire storm. "You look good," he said. "Better than the last time I saw you." "Freedom suits me," I joked. He nodded. "You handled it better than most. Most guys I see want to burn the world down when something like that happens." I shrugged. She lit the fire. I just walked away before it reached me. He laughed, then grew serious. "You know, not everyone gets out clean. You did. That's rare." I thought about that later. He was right. Clean breaks are rare in a dirty world. One evening, I got a text from an unknown number. "Thank you for not destroying me when you could have." It was her. I didn't reply. Not out of anger, but because I didn't need to. Her message wasn't for me. It was for her own peace. And mine was already complete. Months turned into seasons. Life found rhythm again. I started dating, slowly, cautiously. The first few times were awkward. I flinched when someone's phone lit up during dinner, half expecting another lie waiting to be discovered. But the woman I met was different, honest, steady, patient. Her name was Lila. She didn't try to fill the void. She simply sat beside it, unafraid of the silence. With her, things felt easy again. Real. She once asked me, "Do you still think about her?" I paused before answering. Sometimes. But not because I miss her. Because she taught me what I'll never accept again. Lila smiled softly. Then she did you a favor, in a way. Yeah, I said, exhaling. The most painful kind. One Sunday morning, I found myself driving past the neighborhood where my ex used to live. Not intentionally, I was just taking the long route home. As I passed the park, I saw her there, sitting on a bench, reading while Grace played nearby. The girl was laughing, chasing pigeons, her curls bouncing in the sunlight. For a moment, I stopped the car and watched. They looked okay. Maybe not happy in the way fairy tales promise, but surviving. Living. She looked up and caught my eye. For a split second, our gazes met. There was no bitterness, no anger, just quiet understanding. Two people who had shared a storm and somehow made it out alive, on different shores. I gave a small nod. She smiled faintly, then looked back at her daughter. That was enough. As I drove away, I realized something. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it just means you've stopped bleeding from the wound they gave you. By the time I got home, the sun had set. I poured a drink, sat by the window, and smiled at the silence around me. The past had finally stopped knocking. And the man who once shattered in that kitchen, he'd rebuilt himself from the ground up. Not bitter. Not broken. Just free.